Hey team, I hope you're well. We are on take 2 of Secret Women's Business, how to optimize your training around your menstrual cycle. That's right, we're talking about periods today, and if you've been a long-term client, I'm sure you have had the period talk with me or several period talks because, well, as women, we have a lot to deal with, and there's a lot happening around your cycle that we can actually track to make your training better, to understand your body better, and to optimize not only your training but your lifestyle. So first up, we have 2 distinct phases of your menstrual cycle, and of course everyone knows the big event of the period. This is when you bleed, and everyone thinks this is the main event of the menstrual cycle, but it is not. I assure you. Ovulation is the most important part of your menstrual cycle, and your body's actually preparing for a very long time to ovulate, and that happens roughly around day 14. However, most people are only paying attention to the part where they bleed, unless you're planning on getting pregnant or something like that. So we're talking today not only about training on your period, but how the rest of the month looks for you energy-wise and productivity-wise. So first up, let's do a little background on what the different phases of the menstrual cycle, I kind of started that there, and how it works and how you can make it work in your favor. So first up, there's 2 phases of your menstrual cycle. The first phase, which is right after you start bleeding, that is the follicular phase, okay? So day 1 is the day when you start bleeding heavily. So it's not like the spotting that's at the beginning of your period. It's the first day of heavy bleeding is day 1 of your menstrual cycle. And I highly, highly suggest that you start tracking at the very least, when your menstrual cycle is. So tracking day 1 is the first day of heavy bleeding. And you can use period apps. There's so many good apps out there. There's Flow. I use one that's just called Period Tracker. So start tracking your periods. It'll be a game changer, I promise. But that first day 1 through about day 7, we're usually a little bit lower energy, and it's understandable because our body's going through a lot. Shedding uterus lining, it's a lot of work. We feel bloated, we feel tired, lethargic, and training might kind of suck. So that's usually the first couple days of your period. And then as we head into the second week, so first 1 through 7, that little phase kind of sucks. And then from day 7 to about day 14, we're on fire. So this is the second half of your follicular phase where our estrogen is increasing. All right. So we have this little burst of estrogen that gives us a lot of energy. Our libido is higher. You might notice you're a little bit more randy around those days. And also we feel more productive, more focused, and just ready to do it, whatever it is. And so usually training feels great. On the day 7 through 14, and then even after ovulation, that little window of opportunity is when we're training our best. And so we need to take advantage of that. So when you're feeling really, really good and you're like, wow, training's good, everything's feeling great, we got to capitalize on that, because in the second half of your cycle, the luteal phase, things start slowing down. So right after ovulation, that's the main event, and it happens typically on day 14-ish, if you have a textbook cycle, anyway, from day 11 to 14. That's when we ovulate. So your body produces that egg, right? And from there, our estrogen kind of dips down. And instead of having more higher estrogen, we're actually going to have our progesterone kind of come up into the scene at that point. So progesterone is only made after ovulation. So that's why ovulation is the most important part of your cycle, because we only get progesterone from ovulating. And so if you're missing ovulation, so you're not having real periods, you might just having spotting, or if you're just skipping periods altogether, we don't make progesterone. And it's super important for mental health, so avoiding depression and anxiety. It's really good for bones and joint health. And it's also just has a really good calming effect, and we actually need it in our brain to be healthy. So it's super duper important that your body's making its own progesterone. And side note, you're not getting progesterone from your birth control if you're on birth control. That's synthetic progestins. It doesn't act the same in your body, and I highly suggest doing a form of birth control that allows you to ovulate. So after you ovulate, you have progesterone coming onto the scene, you feel a lot more calm. And still that like week of ovulation, you still feel like awesome. You still feel like you can train really hard and you don't have a ton of cravings. You're not feeling bloated. You're feeling really good. And then when we get up to the end of the luteal phase, so say the week before your period, that's around day 21 to 28 if you have that textbook period. At that point, energy starts dipping, right? So we don't have that crazy energy and things might start to feel a little bit hard. Things in the gym feel like heavier. I always notice when I'm doing pull-ups feel like harder than they normally do, or like max lifting, so heavy weightlifting feels heavier than it typically does in the past. And that's usually in that last week. If you're experiencing PMS symptoms, that's also when that's going to show up. So things such as irritability, grumpiness, sore boobs, those kind of things. So knowing what your normal symptoms are is a big part of also tracking your period. So when we get to the week before your period, you kind of understand what's going on. For me personally, I have this really weird thing that happens 7 days, literally 7 days before I start my period. I get super cranky and I'm like super short fuse and have no idea why. And it literally is that 7-day mark before I start my period. And then it evens out. But like I can always tell, I'm like, okay, yep, here we are. Day 21, here we go. So knowing how your body reacts to those hormones on the second half of your cycle is really important. And it's also important for me to know to help you train optimally. So if you're feeling like everything's hard, we don't push super hard. It doesn't make sense because you're really fighting against your body's anatomy. And then of course we get into your period and that's starting the cycle all over again. That's back to day 1. Okay, so when we have these little emotional / hormonal roller coasters throughout the month, it's really important to track those patterns just so you can understand yourself better. The more you are in tune with your body, the more you understand what's happening within you and you're not like blindsided by these things, the more empowered you are and the more in charge of your body and your life you are. So if you're not already, I highly suggest you using a period tracking app. There's so many out there. I use one called Period Tracker. Fitbit has one. There's ones called Flow. There's ones that are actually even correlated with training. So I highly recommend you getting at least the very bare minimum a period tracker so you know when it's coming and you understand what's happening with your moods, and then track your symptoms, your energy levels, track if you have PMS symptom and all that kind of stuff. And just a little side note on PMS. First of all, PMS is real. No matter if people say, oh, it's all in your head, it's actually a real thing. And it's driven by inflammation. We know that now. So inflammation meaning inflammation from your gut. So if you're not eating very good, if you're having high inflammatory foods, if you're very, very stressed out, if you're not taking care of your body, you're not sleeping well, these are all things that influence PMS. So tracking your symptoms is really important because we want to know what is your normal period and what is like above and beyond, you know, like if you're taking like handfuls of painkillers every single day to deal with the pain, if you're feeling suicidal or immensely depressed, if you're extremely emotional or crying a lot, if you're bleeding super duper heavy, these are all things that we really need to know because they're big red flags that something's not right. So when you start actually learning what's normal, we can see better what's not normal and address the problem and get help. Okay, so if you have those things that are like, this isn't normal, I don't normally need to take 20 ibuprofen a day on my period, like what's going on, that's when we seek help. All right, so main takeaways, ovulation is the main event of the menstrual cycle and you should be tracking of when you're ovulating because you're gonna feel epic around that time. That's the time where we're like, all the energy, all the performance, all the libido, all the things. All right, and then we also need to know when the period's coming and how we're feeling in that week leading up to it and adjusting training as necessary. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the period talk. There's so much more from where that come from. I'm really diving deep into the menstrual cycle and how the female physiology works because I, A, want to perform better myself, and B, I want to help you guys. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of you and helping you understand your body better so you know what to expect and so you can perform at your absolute highest. So if you have any questions about period stuff or menstrual cycle stuff, performance, whatever, please put them in the comments. I'd love to hear, or hit me up in our next session and we can talk about it face to face. But I like geeking out on this stuff, and honestly, I just want to help you understand yourself better. All right, that's all from me. I gotta go now because I'm heading off to the gym and do some sessions and, Tuesday things. Okay, talk to you guys later. Bye.